Super Rugby, the weekend games, folks. There are 4 games on, 3 Saturday, 1 on the Sunday. We'll go through some lineups, some stats and predictions, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how you think these games are going to go. The first one is what I think is going to be billed as a bit of a kind of grudge match going forward. Like it should be a traditional rivalry with these, once it becomes a tradition, with these two new teams facing each other. The two Pacific teams, the Drua against Moana Pasifika. This one is being played in Sydney, so it's kind of a neutral ground, which is kind of unfortunate for the first time these teams meet, but I mean, such is the way things are with the pandemic. Neither team's on a great run with 1 win each, and 10 losses for the Drua, 9 for Moana Pasifika. Last week, the Drua were particularly disappointing. Moana Pasifika actually could have won their game, but yeah, throughout this season, they've both had games that they'll look back on with a bit of I guess regret, and some games where they've kind of really performed pretty well. But here's a chance for one of these sides to get that kind of elusive second win. For the Drua, they have brought back some of the big guns, I reckon. Teti Tela's off the bench. I didn't even think he got off the bench last week. So he takes the place of Caleb Muntz at 10, which is good news. Lamani is in at 9. They've got Hamosi in on the wing, which is great news because he's like the second guy in the competition for defenders beaten, and that's a team that's only won 1 game. Ravovo is also in on the midfield. Darren Alangi is he's still a captain in the back row. Interestingly, hooker Dolokoto is at 7, which I was surprised to see. Apparently he plays in the back row as well. But yeah, Nagusa is also back on the bench. We haven't seen him for quite some time. So yeah, they have made a few changes, but pleased to see some of the kind of big guns back. It looks like the Drua anyway, maybe targeting this game. But it's hard to say with the Drua because they have rotated players so much this season. It's kind of hard to get a clue what the coach thinks their best 15 is at the moment. For Moana Pasifika, they've made fewer changes. But interestingly, Lincoln McClutchy is given the reins this week at 10. So Liliafano is down on the bench. Likewise, Ta'afu is down on the bench. So Solomon Akata, who also didn't come off the bench last week, is in at 13. He's a big unit. So we'll see how he goes. Danny Tawala is back. I think he was named last week but didn't end up playing because he had to pull out late. Michael Curry switches into the second row. Alex McRobbie gets a start up from the bench. So yeah, both sides tinkering a wee bit. And we'll see kind of how the game plays out. On paper anyway, there shouldn't be that much kicking because these two sides kick the ball the least. The Drua have the worst line out in the competition, and the Moana Pacifica one's not a heck of a lot better, but it is genuinely a bit better. Both sides, though, love to throw an offload around. And predictions-wise, the bookies have got the Drua by 1, and the algorithm, the Rugby Forecast algorithm, has got the Drua by 1. So on paper, despite the fact that it's almost a nothing game in terms of the table. It's got everything about it in terms of these teams first meeting up. They've not really had that much success in terms of getting wins on the board. So one of these sides is going to double their winning rate unless it's a draw. It's an afternoon game, 2:35 over in Australia. So yeah, man, this could be just a nice relaxing sit down with a cold beverage and watch these guys chuck it around. It could be a really interesting game. We'll see how it goes. Second one, Blues and Reds, kind of two sides up towards the higher end of the table, although the Reds have been on a bad run. They've lost 3 on the bounce now, which is pretty disappointing. But they are bolstered with their lineup with the return of one guy in particular. But I mean, I got to give a mention to the Blues as well. They are having a genuinely really good season, which is pleasing to see. And every time I've thought a little bit of doubt about the Blues, and maybe there's some areas where they're still not that convincing, they keep kind of stepping up and proving some of those doubts wrong. So it's another test for them. I think it's their last game, regular season game at Eden Park. So we'll see how they're able to kind of finish out this season. There's a 7:05 kickoff at Eden Park. The Blues have named a pretty tidy lineup. I mean, they've brought back Beauden Barrett. Remember, he was on All Blacks rest last week. He's alongside Christie, who continues on. Tuivasa-Sheck and Ioane in the midfield. Talea, Peter Fetishev's the fullback. Caleb Clark, so it's pretty stable. The back row, man, it's Tutu, Papali'i, and Ioane. That's all Blacks back row. Tuangafasi and Hodgman are 2 All Black props alongside Eklund, who's been one of the kind of New Zealand top performing hookers in the competition thus far. So, man, it's pretty tidy, and you can bring on Nepolo Lala, Luke Romano, even Zan Sullivan's on the bench this week. So, yeah, the Blues lineup is looking about as strong as we've seen it all year. For the Reds, the guy I was talking about is James O'Connor. He is back. He does make a big difference when he plays at 10, so he is back at 10 alongside McDermott. So that's an all Wallabies 9-10 combo. Paisami is also back. He's at 12 this week, replacing Hamish Stewart. So he's back from injury. Vunivalu, kind of like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, just wants some ball, man. So give that man the ball and let's see what he can do. Neither of those guys... Tuivasa-Sheck's looked pretty good in recent weeks, but not kind of phenomenal. But neither of these guys has maybe lived up to the billing just yet. But still early days, and they've both missed a few games through injury. Udu is back, because remember, there's no Harry Wilson. He was injured in last week's game. And Fraser McCryde, who's been a top performer from the Reds, even when they've been losing, is out. He's ill, although apparently it's not COVID. So hopefully he's back in a week's time. Blythe is up from the bench. Connor Vest gets a start. Angus Scott Young's up from the bench. So, yeah, some changes. Salakai Aloto's had to drop down this week. Looking at the stats, the Blues, man, their ball carrying is effective. They have the most run meters per carry of all the teams, 4.6. Remember, some of these games recently, not so much last week, but in previous weeks, they've been living off not that much ball. But when they do get that ball, they're effective with it. The Reds, on the other hand, have had a bit more possession. They still got pretty effective carrying. 4.2 run meters per carry for them is not too far behind the Blues, but they have had some line-out issues. Their line-out needs to function properly if they're going to kind of compete with this Blues side, who, as I said, are just in really good form at the moment. Predictions-wise, the bookies have got this as a blowout. 20 points by the Blues. The algorithm's a little bit more conservative, but still says the Blues by 11. So we'll see how that game goes. And the last one on Saturday is the Tars up against the Hurricanes. Kind of similar records, 7-4 and 6-5. Tars are 2 wins on the bounce, beaten Moana Pasifika last week and then the Crusaders the week before. The Canes gave the Drua an absolute hiding last week, so we'll see if they're able to kind of continue some of that form. The Tars, they've still got no Michael Hooper, and Harry Johnson-Holmes is still out as well. But they are bolstered by the return of Ned Hannigan, who's back from Japan. He's on the bench. We haven't seen him in Aussie rugby for a wee while. But otherwise, the lineup is actually pretty stable. If I'm not mistaken, it's more or less the same 15 that started last week. Izzy Parise has been in cracking form in that midfield. He's at 13. He's like the second top offloader. I mean, that league background kind of helps him, I guess, a bit. But he's such a big ball carrier at 13. Noah Nitawase is in on the right wing. And he's likewise been in pretty cracking form in terms of breaking the line. And then Charlie Gamble's in at number 7. And he's tackling the house down. So when Hooper came back, from his injury, Gamble was still getting the game at 6. But Charlie Gamble, as I said, at 7 has been phenomenal. Hugh Sinclair is up from the bench into the second row this week alongside Jed Holloway. But, like I mentioned, it's relatively stable stuff for the Tars. The Canes, on the other hand, have made a bunch of changes. They've got Geordie Barrett back, and he's at 12. So he's got a bit of musical chairs things going on with where he's going to line up. Savi is back. That's Julian on the right wing. Artie's back at number 8 because Karifi is still at 7. James Blackwell's back. Jamie Booth is back. So they've brought a bunch of guys back, a bit of rotation. Compared to the side that played last week. So it is likewise a pretty strong-looking team. Balin Sullivan's been in really good form in the midfield. And then Aidan Morgan has kind of looked the business at 10 as well. So he's kind of kept Jackson, Guard and Bishop riding the pine. Billy Proctor's had to drop to the bench for this one. You've got experienced guys like Owen Franks and Dane Cole's on the bench. Wee bit of a blast from the past with those guys, but good to see them both fit. Stats-wise, man, the Canes, the most clean breaks of any team on average. They just love cutting teams to bits. They get 6.5. The average across the comp is 4.6. So they're well above everybody else. The Waratahs are at 5, so also above average. But they're facing the Tars, who concede the least clean breaks of all the teams. They concede only 3.3. The average is 4.7, and the Hurricanes concede 4. So both these sides are good performers, but what's going to break first, the Waratahs defense or the Canes attack? We'll have to wait and see. The bookies have got the Canes by 6, and the algorithm has got the Canes by 9. So away from home, they are favoured to get the job done in this one, but that one looks like it could be a pretty tidy match as well. And the last one, the Rebels and Chiefs. Chiefs have been a little bit off the boil, but you still feel like they could, on their day, pretty much knock anybody off. And the Rebels, Had a pretty atrocious week last weekend. Wait till we get to their stats, man. They're pretty bad. They have made a few changes, the Rebels. They've brought back Michael Wells. Brad Wilkin has shifted jerseys to number 7 from 6. And Richard Hardwick is now riding the pine. Likewise, Joey Powell. So they've been replaced by, like I said, Wells and James Tuttle. Andrew Callaway has had to move into the midfield this week. Reece Hodge is still at fullback. Pone Fa'amusili is still there. He is one of my favourites at tight head, and Jordan Uelese is back from injury as well. So James Hansen drops down to the bench. So yeah, man. Basically, these guys just need to be defensively better. Whoever's playing. The Chiefs have also made a few changes. Josh Ioane is back at 10. So is Brad Weber. So that's a pretty experienced. A couple of guys at 9 and 10. Not that they've played that much game time together. Narua gets a start after being on the bench this week. Akoi gets a start. Likewise, Finau. Sawakula drops to the bench, and it looks like he might be covering lock based on his jersey number. Jacobson has had to cover his spot at number 8. Front row is still Ross Tokiaho and Ta'aval, so pretty tidy looking. I mentioned some stats, man. The Rebels concede the most clean breaks. They got the lowest tackling percentage. They got the highest turnovers conceded. Yeah, it's pretty messy stats for the Rebels. They were kind of on a decent run, and then they've kind of let things go a little bit. So, yeah, we'll see how well they can bounce back or not against the Chiefs. Chiefs' turnovers considered also pretty high, to be fair. They love chucking the ball around. Sometimes they end up dropping it. So we'll see if they're able to be a little bit more consistent this week. They are big-time favourites with the bookies, 17 points for the Chiefs, and the algorithm, 7 points for the Chiefs. So either way, folks, these games should be pretty entertaining, whether you're up the top end of the log or the bottom. There's still some pretty interesting games on the cards, but you guys let me know what your thoughts are. Do you see any of the underdogs getting wins? Are the Tars the most likely, or the Reds likely to go indeed and park and upset the Blues? The Drua and the Moana Pacific game seems like a bit of a coin toss, so we'll see how that one plays out. And the Rebels, man, if they can just defend better, even if they lose, I think that would be an improvement, because last week was pretty messy. But you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.